My name is Joanna Barnett, and I will be reading Chapter 5. I called Miriam Vasquez, former president of the board of directors of nonprofit my mom started 4 years ago. It is called Doctores Fronterizos, border doctors, volunteer physicians on a 2-week rotating schedule overseen by my mother had been successfully treating illnesses, practicing preventive medicine, and safely delivering babies on both sides of the Rio Grande at no cost to the mostly poor patients. It would be hard to guess how many lives had been saved and how much suffering alleviated before Norma and Lil decided my mother must be stealing from the organization. When I told Miriam the reason for my call, she seemed displeased to be a suspect, but expressed no sadness over Norma's untimely death. That didn't surprise me, but she didn't say one word about being innocent either, which did. She said she was going to be too busy until next week. I reminded her we were talking about murder, not a social visit, and she caved before I had to start using big words like subpoena. She agreed to meet me at my office in 2 hours. I called Floyd Graham, another former board member and retired nurse. She was home and had already been told about the murder by a friend of the JP's wife. She told me in her deep South Texas accent, "Come on by, sweet gal." The mouth-watering aroma of baking bread met me before she did. Flour was smudged across Floyd's face and apron, and a fine white powder had settled on her eyelashes. She looked like the same old Floyd, as full of Texas friendly as anyone I ever knew. I thought she was too polite to kill anyone, there being no hospitality in murder. Still, I had to talk to her. Floyd was dressed in red cotton drawstring pants and a red tank top. She wore huge, dangly earrings that were also red, her favorite color. Come in, come in. Look at you all dressed up in your uniform. So professional. Let's sit in the kitchen, do you mind? Not at all. Wherever you'd be most comfortable. I followed her down a hallway of highly polished Sotillo tile and a kitchen painted in different shades of yellow. I'm baking bread. Floyd flicked one hand at a floury mess. Smells wonderful, I said, and took a seat where she indicated at the less cluttered end of the table. How you doing, honey? Floyd had that serious, sad look people got when they were trying to ask how I was getting along without Kevin. None of them wanted to hear the truth. It was too brutal for them. I'm okay, Floyd. Better. Would you like a piece of bread? I just took it out of the oven. I'd love that. She sliced off a huge hunk of warm, whole wheat bread and slid a buttered dish and strawberry preserves my way. A few questions for you, Floyd, I said between bites. What would you like to know? She was attentive but didn't stop kneading. I want to know if you have any idea who could have killed Norma Bates. Her expression was priceless. Well, about anybody, I reckon. I laughed and nearly choked. That was mean. I shouldn't have said that. I know she had friends, but I wasn't one of them. Floyd suppressed a smile and before I recovered added, It wasn't me that killed her. You were coming to that, I bet. Now mind, I don't care for her, but I feel sorry for her because her being flicked. Flicked? You know, crazy as a coot. Afflicted, as you Yankees say. She put her hands on her hips and made a pasty white mess there too. I was born in Texas, Floyd, same as you. You were born in the wrong part of Texas to grow up talking like that. It sounded like she was talking. I laughed. Well, that's debatable, but I didn't come to argue with you. That's good, ladies, don't argue. Her hands went back into the bowl. I guess we shouldn't be talking bad about poor old Norma. God bless her. She was lost as a goose in a snowstorm. I nearly lost it again. D'ya hear? D'ya see her? Floyd asked. If you mean, did I see her dead? Yes, I did. I couldn't help but feel sorry for her, and especially the children, no matter how terrible she was with us. She was their mother. That's true, I reckon. That's part sad. Did you ever hear someone say they wanted to harm her? You were there, little deputy. Every person on our board except for those chicken shits who bailed out said they wanted to hurt her. As I recall, your mom had the most detailed fantasies, but if all of us hated her, I'd be lying to say different. Right. If I were you, I'd check out Stanner. His hands were like a cup Her hands were like a couple of white doves rising from the bowl, then pausing in mid-flight. He doesn't seem like a killer, but that poor man had to live with her. We're going to be talking to him, too. She separated the dough into 2 heavy ceramic bowls, covered them with red and white checkered dishcloths, set them aside, then washed her hands and pulled up a chair close to me. I want to tell you about something I saw. What was that? It was after the mediation in Alpine, and I saw Norma and Miriam have it out in the parking lot of the grocery store. They were kicking up dust. Do you know what happened? What happened was Norma was coming out and Miriam was going in, and Miriam said, "You bitch." Norma said, "I hope you're not talking to me," in her highfalutin way, like she was better than anybody, you know, right? So they were glaring at each other, and then Norma grabbed Miriam's hair and tugged at her. Miriam kicked her smack in the girly goods and said I'd kill her if she were ever got the chance. Floyd looked concerned. I don't believe Miriam would really kill her, do you? Who knows, Floyd? Well, the rest of us had our hearts in helping sick people, but Norma, I don't know what she wanted. It wasn't nothing about helping people. That was a fact I knew. Would you take some bread to your mother? She loves my bread. I'd be glad to, sure. I watched her cover a fragrant, now cool loaf in plastic wrap. You tell her not to admit nothing, she said. I can't say something like that to anyone. Well, of course not, little deputy. Take your bread and tell her to call me. Yes, I will. Thank you, Floyd. Call me if you think of something else you need. She smiled and gave me a hug. I sat in my Explorer, called a few more people I had to interview, and then called Barney. Where are you, Ricos? I just interviewed Floyd Graham, former board member. Floyd, is she that old gal, that Dixie chick? I laughed. Yep. Have you ever heard the expression, she was as lost as a goose in a snowstorm? Or how about flickted? As in, poor thing, she was flickted? Ricos, are you out drinking somewhere? No, I'm just repeating some things I heard from Floyd. She makes me think I don't speak English. Your English is fine. It's hers that's foreign, y'all. I don't know how'd you get anything from her. Talking to Floyd is like trying to herd cats. Barney got me started again. It felt so good to laugh. I think you better come back to the office, he said. You're drinking plenty of fluids. Maybe you're getting dehydrated. I'm coming back to meet Miriam. We have an appointment. Well, you can't be laughing like that if you're conducting serious interviews about a murder. I know, I'm hanging up now. I took the back steps at my mother's house, 2 at a time, and charged in without knocking. Mom, I yelled. Where are you? Table, come on in. When I came around the corner into her spacious kitchen, she was seated just past in the dining room, pouring a glass of sweet tea over ice, as if she was expecting me. My mother makes the best iced tea in the known universe, and I never turn it down, so she didn't bother to ask if I wanted a glass. Were you expecting me, Mom? I hugged her and took in the black eye when she looked up at me. It would have been a hard thing to miss. It was a sinister blue-black color, covering an area about the size and shape of a fist. Her eye was bloodshot and the entire area puffy. Mom's brown eyes usually twinkle, and at least when she looks at me, but they look dull, like she hadn't slept. Her hair is dark brown because she colors it to cover the gray, and it usually looks nice. But I don't think she had even combed it, not like my mom. I heard you in the driveway, but I've been listening for you. I knew you'd come once you talked to Barney. I sat across from her. So why do you have a black eye anyway? I already spoke to Barney about it. Stop asking me about the murder. She shoved a small plate of lime slices across the table to me, but didn't meet my eyes. I asked you about your injured eye, not the murder. I ran into my bathroom door in the middle of the night. That's not a crime unless you know something I don't. There's no need to get an attitude, Mom. Barney told me you had a black eye, which concerned me. You're my mother unless you know something I don't. She laughed and lightened up. I'm sorry, I'm touchy about the subject of the murder. People are talking about me everywhere I go. I'm sure you've heard it was either me or Stanner. Yes, I've heard. Well, what? Do you think it was me? You just said it wasn't. Don't you have any other leads? I can't talk to you about the investigation, Mom. I just came by to see if you're okay. Later, I'll bring you some bread that Floy asked me to give you. She does make the best bread. How is she? She's fine. Same old Floy. She wants you to call her. Does she think it was me? She thinks anyone who knew Norma could have done it. My mom laughed, and at that, I won't be here later. I'm going to dinner with Annie and Sue Ellen, and I'll probably be out late. I'll leave it on the counter. She was giving me the perfect opportunity to look for a matching earring. Mom, when was the last time you were in Norma's house? It's been a long time. I told you already. I had no reason to go there. What makes you think I would? Because your earring was there, near the body, not knocked off into a corner, but right there where I couldn't miss it. I was thinking maybe you would run by and check on our kids or something. My mom worried about the children because Norma didn't believe in doctors and never took them to see one, no matter how ill they were. You're thinking I ran by to stab her to get even with her for what she did to me. Of course I don't think that, Mom. Now I made her angry, and maybe for nothing. I drank tea and covertly watched, trying to imagine her as a killer. That seemed a pointless exercise for a daughter who loved nearly everything about her mother. Instead of a stealthy villain with a knife, I pictured her playing hide and seek, chasing me through the house with childlike energy until we collapsed in giggles. I saw several kids at the clinic today, Mom said. Are they talking about the murder? Of course. And? They think it was a one-armed man, Mom said. A space alien, or Dracula. Pretty much in that order. I'll make a note of it. I went into my cramped office that holds a small desk and chair, an ancient metal filing cabinet, and an aged, overstuffed chair older than me. It has a worn pink and purple flower pattern that's as hideous as it sounds, but it sits by a window that looks out at an exquisite cactus and boulder-covered hill that abuts our parking lot. I spend a lot of time in that chair, thinking and trying to figure things out. I popped down to check my hill. The sight was a comfort for its steadfastness as well as its beauty. I noted for the millionth time the three precariously balanced boulders that hang against all odds. A couple of turkey vultures cavorted on wind currents high above the steep rock face at the top of the hill, making black splotches against a bright cloudless sky. They make flying look effortless and joyous. Most days I longed to join them, except for the meals. There is a trade-off for you. Small, drought-tolerant ash, mesquite, and catclaw acacia trees appear to grow straight out of the stone. Agave, spiny ocotillo, the thick stands of prickly pear cactus claim the areas around and between the rocks. The gods of the Chihuahuan desert have been generous with sticking, stabbing, biting growth, native grasses, and even wildflowers. Less generous with rain. Things struggle to survive without moisture and have to adapt or die. It's a desert out there. I had begun to doze when the sudden sound of the ringing telephone catapulted me from the chair in a panic. Deputy Rico speaking. Deputy Rico, Sheriff Ben. He hesitated as if he'd forgotten why he called or didn't want to say. I have a situation. The way he said a situation made me feel chilled. What's going on, sir? I need you to come to Alpine. Okay. Margarita, he said and stopped like he couldn't go through with it. I have a trilingual couple sitting in my office and they say their daughter was raped. My instant response was to scream, no way, but we just had a murder. Instead of screaming, I was speechless. The girl won't talk and the mother is too talkative. The father is too quiet. Who is the girl, Sheriff? Mandy Robbins. Do you know her? I know who she is, but I don't know her well. She's only 14. Does she say who raped her? She hasn't said one word, Margarita, but she brightened when I mentioned your name, so maybe you should talk to her. What about Marcy? In addition to being the other female deputy, Marcy is a nurse and a certified rape counselor. She's in El Paso for a seminar. She won't be back until Tuesday. Has Mandy had a rape kit done on her? No. Her mother bathed her. I could hear the groan even though he didn't utter one. Well, there would still be signs of rape, most likely. I know that, deputy, but her mother refuses to let her take her to the hospital. The office door opened and closed, and Miriam called my name. I'll be right there. Have a seat, I called to her. To the sheriff, I said, I'm about to interview Miriam Vasquez about the murder. Should I reschedule? Will it take long? 10 minutes tops. Go ahead then, but hoof it coming up here. Use your lights and siren. He didn't need to worry about that. One of the few perks of being a deputy is speeding. I went to the front to greet Miriam. She hugged me and we told each other how great we looked. She is a slender, platinum-haired, blue-eyed woman in mid-30s. Soft-spoken, laid back, and somewhat frail, she seems like an easy pushover for a bulldozer like Norma. Miriam, more than any other board member, had defended my mother. She'd spent countless hours putting together evidence that backed up Mom's claim of innocence, and had stood up to Norma with the courage of a Revolutionary War foot soldier. When we settled into our outer office, me in Barney's chair, and her in the one I usually occupied, I asked, "Why were you so reluctant to see me?" "I'm sorry. You really threw me. I wasn't expecting to be a suspect, I guess." "I'm interviewing everyone who knew Norma." "Right. Well, I hadn't thought of that. It hurt me to think you'd believe I'd stabbed her." "I don't think that, Miriam. I have to interview a lot of people I feel sure are innocent. But you have to start somewhere." "So you're talking to all the former board members?" "Yes." "Even Lil?" "Yes, even Lil." "I was just wondering how you're handling that." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you didn't think much of Lil either." "I'm not looking forward to it. Maybe I can get Barney to do it." "Oh, you should go yourself. It'll put her right on her ear." "Miriam, other than talk among board members, have you heard anyone else say they wanted to kill Norma?" "No," she began fidgeting. "Look, Rita, the way I feel about Norma's murder is she had it coming. If I knew something, I wouldn't tell you. I don't. But if I did, you'd be aiding and abetting a criminal in a felony case, and surely you don't condone murder." She grinned at me. "Normally, no, I don't. But Norma had it coming. I'm glad her karma caught up with her quickly. Do you think someone will take out Lil too?" "I hadn't thought about that." "Rita, don't you think it was possibly Stanner? I mean, he lived with her." "We're investigating him." "I hope he gets away with it. You can't tell me he didn't feel a murderous rage toward her after what she did." "No, I can't tell you that, but I didn't kill her. It's one thing to feel like doing it, and another thing to do it." Miriam sighed. "It's a fine line we walk sometimes." "You didn't kill her, did you?" "No, I didn't." I want to talk to you about an incident between you and Norma in Alpine. Are you talking about the one where I kicked her in the crotch? Was there another one? No. Miriam told me about it, and it was more or less the same story Chloe told me, minus the drawl and deep southern expressions. After that, I hurried her out. I don't mean to rush you, but the sheriff needs to see me in Alpine on another case. I left Barney hastily scrawled notes saying only that the sheriff needed my help. When I came out of the office, a red-tailed hawk was feasting on a small creature that she had spread out on one of the boulders on my hill. She looked up from her bloody banquet, blinked at me, and decided I was untrustworthy. She grabbed her prize with her sharp talons and swooped away with it as I headed for the Explorer. State Highway 118 winds and climbs towards Alpine, straightens out for a while, then winds and climbs again through the mountains, standing between South and North Brewster County. We live in the largest county in Texas, covering 6,169 square miles of mostly rough and mountainous terrain. It is also the least populated county, and surely the most beautiful. Alpine is the largest town, with a population about the same as the number of square miles in the county. I drove as fast as I could, considering the road, the lights flashing and siren blaring, but traffic was sparse. After a short time, I turned the siren off because it was annoying. I felt stressed enough without adding irritating noises. First a murder, then a rape. Maybe it was the moon, but it wasn't even full, and there was no news about it falling or slipping out of position in the sky. There had to be something going on. Terlink was the epitome of life in the slow lane, and living there is enhanced by the natural surroundings, clean air, and long-distance vistas that take your breath away. Crime is petty when it exists at all, and usually our problems can be handled by a stern talk with a culprit and/or brief stint of community service. I had to slow and eventually stop for a traveling troop of javelinas crossing the highway. Javelinas look like small wild boars, but are not in the swine family at all. This group ranged in size from a big daddy of 50 pounds with well-developed tusks to a tiny fellow of maybe 7 pounds. They browse desert plants and are specifically fond of prickly pear cactus. I jumped when my satellite phone rang, bleeping to signal an oncoming call. "Why don't you ever return my calls?" barked Jimmy Joe Blanks. I wanted to ream and belittle him, sling the truth at him, but my mother had ruined me with her admonitions to be nice to people. She used to tell me that I should dance with the nerds and the gangly, pimply boys that invited me to because boys had feelings too. It was irritating the things she'd said that I'd had taken to heart. Jimmy Joe wasn't a nerd, nor was he gangly or pimply, but he was not my type and wouldn't take a hint. Truthfully, I didn't have a type. I wasn't looking for anyone and had a broken heart. I wasn't even sure I would have feelings again, except for an ever-present sadness that pressed down on me. I felt like the bull that crushed Kevin's chest had crushed mine too. Jimmy Joe was going on about wanting to see me, desperate, the poor man. I deeply resented my mother's calm voice, which said to be kind. Damn it, Mom, you couldn't have meant Jimmy Joe Blanks. Shoots. Thinking of Barney's nickname nearly made me laugh into the phone. Look, Jimmy Joe, I'm flattered, but it's barely been a year since my husband died, and I'm not ready for another man in my life. I know you've said that before, but I feel like we've made a connection. He felt it. It was his connection. I felt nothing. He was a 6-foot-tall deputy who was not unattractive, but seemed too intense. Of all of the deputies, he was the most sexist, told the filthiest jokes, and made the worst companion on and off the job. His hair was reddish blonde, and had green eyes that should have been an asset but were cold like the eyes of a reptile. You're coming up here, aren't you? We could have a drink later. Oh man, I wanted to drink. Needed one badly. Drinking interested me, but not with the man I didn't like or trust. I tried to get rid of Jimmy Joe by claiming overwork, depression, widowhood, a long list of things he seemed determined not to understand. At least, I said I was expecting a call from the sheriff. "The sheriff is busy," he said in an "I don't believe you" voice. I hung up on him. My mother doesn't know everything. "It doesn't make sense to be nice to everyone," I said to a distant mountain. Then, instead of stressing about violent crimes or obsessed deputies, I cheered myself with the promise of an upcoming drunk. I could almost smell the fragrance of rich gold tequila and the requisite slices of lime. The sliding down my throat part was the best. The warm, burning sensation that went from my mouth to my stomach to my brain and dulled it. Everything will be all right, was its soothing message. Beer, tequila, bourbon, it didn't matter. All of it smoothed out the mangled pieces of my life and made broken things appear fixed. If not fixed, then acceptably broken. I was kidding myself as much as Shoots Blinks was kidding himself. The thought occurred to me that maybe he was in as much pain as I was. That was scary, and I flipped the siren back on. Better irritated than scared to death.